Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another interview at the Inner Changemaker. Today, we got a perfect example of somebody who is being a change maker and leading people in his own life around him. He is the best-selling author of The Third Circle Theory, which is a powerful book which explains how some of today's top visionaries are made. This guy was born in 1982 in the middle of a revolution in Iran. He was raised in France for a majority of his childhood, and eventually he came over to the US in 1997, raised by a single mother his entire life with very limited resources, which I'm sure we'll dive into in the beginning of this. But we're here to really talk about his story, how he went from that, being a successful telemarketer, to being VPs in banks, to being financially independent at the age of 25. And he really dedicates a lot of his time. You might know his brand. If you've seen anything around Secret Entourage or Secret Academy, it's very unique platforms which really help young entrepreneurs stay motivated, educate, and improve their lives. And we're also here to talk about his new book, Radius: How Visionaries Engineer Empires. So we got Pejman Ghadimi on the show. Pejman, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Jay.
Yeah. If it's all right with you, is it cool if we give you call you PJ throughout this interview?
Yeah, call me whatever you want. You can call me PJ Nacho, whatever you want, man.
PJ Nacho. Okay. So, you when I read like a little bit about your story and even going through some of the things that you've been able to accomplish, you're really living like kind of like the immigrant success story, the immigrant dream. I mean, in some way, it's definitely like achieving the American dream. Maybe, I don't know if you feel that way towards it, but how does, like, after, I don't know, listening and doing so many of these interviews and having the level of success you've had, I mean, how does that feel for you, just on a personal level, knowing that you came from that perspective and watching your parents, kind of immigrate a couple different times in your own life?
I think it's one of these things where, it actually reminds me all the time to not take any of this for granted. More than anything else, it feels good to be at a level where you don't have that constant worry or fear of, like, what if this happens, what if that happens? But at the same time, you always kind of leave that in the back of your mind to a degree, to always be pushing the boundary further. Because what ends up happening is, I've always been a big believer that the biggest, this is a quote, I don't remember who said this, but the biggest enemy to a great life is a good life. Yeah. And so I don't allow myself to get complacent in a good life. And so, having grown up and being very poor, and then having had the opportunity to work for the things I have and create a lot of these opportunities for myself, I still remind myself that I'm far from done. And so I still have quite a bit of way to go, just so I don't lose my work ethic, if you know what I mean.
Well, I absolutely love that because, when I read your story, it actually resonated with mine, quite a bit. I mean, my parents immigrated, from Hong Kong and China over to Canada. We spent I grew up actually in the US. And so there was a lot of sacrificing. There was a lot of, uprooting of my parents' life to try to create a better future for their children, for myself, my brother. Do you feel that when you started your businesses, or at least when you started telemarketing or any of these things, did you feel like coming from that immigrant perspective, did that help in terms of work ethic? And did that help in terms of how it started getting you to view your businesses that you're creating?
Well, I've always looked at everything as I had no choice. And I literally had no choice early on. I just kept that mentality throughout. I mean, when I started telemarketing as an immigrant, I didn't have a green card. So losing my job would have meant losing the opportunity to work. Right. It was very different. Like, most people lose their jobs, they go find another job. I had looked for 6 months to even find a company willing to even hire me, thinking I had a green card without seeing it. So let alone would I ever find another one? Well, I couldn't take my chances, right?
Yeah.
So when I started telemarketing, I didn't take it as, oh, it's just another job. It's just something I got to do to make some money. I looked at it as, this is the only thing I can do to make money right now that is going to be useful and something greater than just, making $5 there and there, mowing lawns or doing something like that. And while I was young, I've always understood that idea of having this fear of falling back, like having this just constant, I can't lose this. Like I can't lose this opportunity. I have to make it count. And so everything I touched, regardless that it was mowing the lawn, washing a car, or even working as a telemarketer, has always been taken very seriously. And I think that was part of the reason why I became very successful. It wasn't necessarily that I was an immigrant. It's because I took my life seriously, even if others from the outside felt that being a telemarketer was a joke or not a long-term job or a short-term kind of, like moneymaker for the moment or a joke of a job, whatever they thought it was. For me, it was the only opportunity, and so it had to count.
So, I mean, PJ, I think it's really great. I think I watched one of your videos like a while back when you said you're not even that impressed sometimes at your own success story, and not to devalue any of your own success, but you just ultimately, I think you said you moved your survival line. You were just trying to survive, and you're trying to, you essentially change that for yourself. Talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how did that mentality of, because there's a lot of people that immigrate to different countries. There's a lot of people that, have parents that sacrificed a lot for them. But not everybody can create multiple, 7-figure businesses and kind of start all the different things that they've done. So tell us a little bit about that type of survival instinct versus that success.
So a lot of people, especially younger people today, they don't know what they want to do in life, right? They're like, oh, well, I see all these entrepreneurs doing stuff. I got to figure out what my passion is. I got to go after the things that matter, and so on and so forth. Sure. What they don't realize is they don't realize how to live in the present. They realize what they want in the future, but they don't know how to connect the mechanics of the present to the things they want in the future. And I don't mean things like cars and stuff. I mean the feeling they want to experience tomorrow, Like they understand they want to be in love in the future and married, but they don't understand what they need to do today to be able to be in a position to love in the future and to be married in the future. It's the same thing in business, right? It's like you want all these great things. You want to own a big company. You want to have financial freedom. You want to have freedom of time and all of these things. You know that. Most people know that. That's what 99.9% of the earth wants. And the other 0.1% pretends they don't, but they still want the same thing. So the main core, I think, is that people need to learn how to live in the present. And for me, I didn't know what to do either. When I was young, I didn't have the things you guys have today. I didn't have the internet. I didn't have smartphones. We didn't have the stuff, the access you guys have to information, knowledge, and things like that. So you guys today can always go on a computer and discover things. I couldn't do that when I was young. So I had to pick up a book and try to discover things. And believe it or not, I've never read a book in my life. I hated reading. So it was just a big hate. And today I've written books, but I just hated reading. So it was very hard for me to kind of learn that way. But I knew one thing. I knew that I didn't have access to education. I knew I didn't have access to most of the things that the common, more privileged kids had access to. What I had access to was just one concept. And it was the concept that I didn't want to be poor. So I didn't know how or what I wanted to do to be rich, but I sure as hell knew I didn't want to be poor. So it was like accepting that no matter what happens, if I work 1 hour today, then I'm making, let's say, $2 an hour, like some slave work somewhere. Sure. It's still better than zero. So the point was, instead of focusing so much on what should my life look like, what are the things I need to do to be making a lot of money, I just said, well, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I know I don't want to be poor. And the opposite of poor is rich. And so I didn't know how to get rich, but I knew that having $1 was better than zero, having 10 was better than 5, having 20 was better than 10, right? So the point was always, how do I make an extra buck? It doesn't matter, like if I have an hour, how do I spend that hour making money? So the point was, I would go to work, I had this telemarketing job, and then suddenly I would come back and be like, well, I have 2 hours of free time. So let me go ahead and wash a car. Let me try to, talk to my neighbor about seeing if he wants me to clean his 2 cars for $10 a piece, and so it was just constantly putting myself in this mentality of not wanting to be poor, because I knew that I definitely wanted to be rich at some point in the future. And the only way I was going to get rich in the future was by doing the work in the present. And since I didn't know what the work was that I wanted to do, because I didn't have a business or a thought process around that, what I did know was that working somewhere or working doing something, while maybe not perfect, was still better than doing nothing or working nowhere. So, my job when I was very early, very, very young, and one of the things I always tell young people today is don't focus so much about, like what should I be doing? How many jobs should I have? What is the thing I need to be focusing on? But instead, focus on whatever it is that you're doing right now how can you get better at it? If you want a better job tomorrow, like that's fine. Everybody wants a better job, right? But then the question is, what are you doing today? Like, meaning like the job you have today, how well are you doing that? And someone would argue, well, that's not my career. I want that other job. Yeah, but you don't have that other job, right? You have the job you have right now.
Right.
So where is your focus today? Like, is it on the job you're doing now? Or is it in the dreamland of what may happen tomorrow or may not happen, right? So are you still doing the work today, even if you're preparing for tomorrow? And I think that was the big thing for me that allowed me to kind of constantly move forward. And that eventually, just to get back to your question about the survival line, that started raising my survival line over and over and over from, okay, I have $100 in my pocket to, okay, I have $1,000 in my bank account to I have $5,000 in my bank account and a payment for a car, and then so on and so forth, and constantly growing. And so being young, is not, it's easy in the sense that your responsibilities are low, so you just have to make sure that each responsibility you're given is optimized to the maximum capacity, because what ends up happening is over time, as you get older and you get more responsibilities, you get a family, you get to graduate college, you have 2 jobs, you start building a business. Well, what do you want at that point and stage in your life isn't all the experience in the world, because you can never have all the experience in the world. But what you can have is you can have the character that you've built since you've been 12 years old to being and having a hardworking mentality, or having the capacity to say, I'm going to focus on the present. No matter what I touch, I'm going to be the best at it. Even if I don't agree that it is the best of my capacity at this very moment, if I don't have another opportunity right now, the opportunity I have is the one I'm going to make count.
I mean, PJ, I think you touch on so many different kind of, they're intangibles, but I mean, they're so crucial for especially the young change makers or people that are trying to, create any type of change in their own life. I'm glad that you kind of opened up that little story in terms of how you kind of, started your, I think it was like a car detailing business, right? Or like now I think you still have it. It's a luxury concierge business at this stage. But I mean, I know as we kind of talk more and more about the book, I know one of your core like pillars that you touch on is people, right? So how did you start even understanding that at such a young age to to have great people around you to, whether to figure out, what it is that people want, even from a car, washing business or, to a car detailing business to what it is that you guys do now?
Well, I mean, look, in the original part of detailing cars, I was like 14 years old. And like I said, I was looking for a way to make an extra buck in between the time I worked. I had a job, I was going to high school, I had to do something to make an extra buck. And what I did is I washed cars. I didn't even detail cars. I didn't understand anything about detailing cars. I just washed cars.
Yeah.
And what happened is, even when I ended up going to work, well, there was a building, there was a lot of cars. I see cars, I see people. I tell them, do you want me to wash them? And even if I had a 20-minute break, I would come out with a quick detail and wash someone's car and pretend I did it with soap and water. It didn't even matter, right? Like, it was just the fact that it was like, I'm making $5, in the job.
Yeah.
Happy. So, the point was that I just wasn't afraid of the work. I think that was the key thing. And that small thing, everybody said was stupid. Why would you do $5 car washes? It's a waste of time. Who's going to do anything with $5? But, by just talking to people and learning about the things they needed, that car wash business slowly became a repair business. And we started fixing light bulbs and doing detail jobs, and it became better, And then, again, understanding leverage of people. I had 2 friends. They were immigrants as well. They didn't have a job. I said, well, their time is invaluable. They want to do something. Well, why don't you come wash cars while I'm at work? I'll book the cars, you wash the cars, right?
Yeah.
So again, understanding different people have different needs. Someone needed a car washed, someone needed a job. Well, there you go, connect to them, right? And let me manage that process. Even at 14, it didn't matter. So the point was, now I had these immigrant guys washing cars, detailing cars, changing light bulbs in parking lots and mobile, in a time where we didn't have mobile car washes. We didn't have any of that fancy stuff we have today.
Sure.
And then, one of the things that occurred over time is, it wasn't in my path. I didn't want to be in the car business. I didn't want anything to do with the car business. As I evolved, as I got a green card, as I moved up the corporate ladder and got into banking, I decided that the car business wasn't really for me. I kind of went away from it. I always loved cars, but I didn't want to work with cars. I just, enjoyed driving cars, whatever. So, as I kind of graduated myself and moved on past this idea of working as a car wash guy and even coordinating this, I left that business to my 2 friends who ran it. And they ran I said, I don't really care. You guys need this to work. You still don't have green cards. Make it count. And over time, after I had a very, very good corporate America career, I made a lot of money in banking, a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of money in real estate, a lot of money in banking. I came back out of that because I got fired. And when I got fired, it really opened up this idea, like, what do I want to do? And so I didn't know what to do again. Like, I was in that place where I was like, I was a banker by trade. I knew I was really good at it. They had given me purpose by being a banker, meaning I enjoyed it. I enjoyed leading people, managing people. And suddenly a corporation took it away from me. And so I knew two things. The first one is I would never let a corporation dictate what my purpose is again. Meaning if I chose it, then I would create it in a manner that would allow me to practice it for the rest of my life and not by the boundaries that I'm told I can practice it in. The second thing he taught me is that I still was clueless about what I wanted to do, no different than when I was 14.
Yeah.
So what I did want to do at that point is make money again, because that's what I knew how to do. I was like, hey, you know what? I don't know how to do anything, but I can't be a banker again, so let me go try to make money. So I found my same two immigrant friends. They were still washing cars, and I'm like,
you're a good friend, PJ. And
no, it made sense, right? It's leverage. It's like saying, look, you guys need me again because now I have money, and you don't have to be mobile anymore. I can get you a building. We can do bigger things. We can go to the next level. Yeah. You guys already have the clients. You've been doing this for a while. Let's combine forces again. We never left on bad terms, right? This is also the key to never burning your bridges with people, So, we went ahead and got a shop and started working, and started just doing things. And I did what I did before. I gave them more leverage. Instead of leveraging them in their time now, I leveraged the money I made to build, to get a building, to get them some tools, to get them more efficient, to offer more services, get them more staff. And then it became a full-grown business. Yeah. Nothing more than just, customizing a few cars and so on and so forth. But I had nicer cars then. So we were able to venture into a ton of new products and services, from customizing cars to brokering cars to, offering all types of deals to dealerships locally and working with them until the recession kicked, and then we adapted again. And then I changed this idea once more of, working for something towards trying to find an angle, because we were going to go bankrupt because of the recession. And so I said, we got to do something. And so I created a whole new investment model in exotic cars that I called at the time VIP motoring, which was helping people invest, because of my banking background, money into exotic cars instead of investing them into banks and investing them into investments at banks and things that at the time were very shaky and people had lost a lot of confidence in. So I had my banking background, I had my banking list, I combined my two concepts, and then it was able to create ultimately a banking concept within the auto industry. And it was the first of its kind back in 2005.
Wow. I mean, PJ, it's so evident, like even listening to a bit of your story, that you're a big fan of leverage, right? And I know you talk about this in Radius, in your new book, in terms of how you leverage resources, how you leverage people, how you leverage the skills and capabilities that you've built up, and you always kind of find a new way of kind of reinventing yourself, right? Or reinventing a new business model, or reinventing a new income stream. So it's kind of crazy to hear the evolution and the wheels. Like I almost felt like I was in your mind a little bit and saw the wheels turning, in terms of how you're able to kind of connect the dots. Before we jump into some of the, we're kind of, talking about some of the pillars that you do cover in the book. How is maybe this book that you've put together, I know is coming out very soon. I know you've done really well. You've written a few books in the past, quite a bit. And, now you had the success with Third Circle Theory. How's this book different than the Third Circle Theory?
Well, it's actually funny because a lot of people are like, oh, why is it called radius? Does it have to do with a circle again? Because they're like, you have the third circle, and now you're talking about
that theme with the, the next one's called diameter. I'm just joking.
Yeah, and it's really not, Third Circle Theory was it for people that are listening that maybe haven't read it. It's a book about entrepreneurial awareness, and it's a book about understanding that you talk a lot about this in your podcast. You talk about people going from currency to purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like doing things that matter. And, and it was the same thing. I'm going to tell you a very quick story and then I'll answer your question. But
sure, yeah.
In my life, I made a lot of money. I made a lot of money from a very young age. I never had a college degree. I never had anybody hand me $1. It was always made. Every opportunity was created. Every single one was worked for. And I never got lucky, if that makes sense. My luck came from the more I worked, not the luckier I got, but the more doors allowed themselves to open. And I still had to do more work to get through them. So there was never a time where I was about to fall where another door opened and said, hey, take this exit. You'll make it big.
Yeah.
It was always like, you got to work. And there's no other alternative to it. I thought that was an important part of my life. But after I made a lot of money through my life in all of these different businesses I owned that were offline and real black and white businesses, like buying lots, doing banking, and then going and building VIP motoring, I came to a place in my life where I realized that, all of these things, money was just leverage, like you said. It was just an opportunity to use that money to do bigger things. It was never about making money. I needed to make money to understand that money was about leverage. So in other words, without money, you don't understand that. You think, if I have a lot of money, I would buy a lot of shit.
Yeah.
But realistically, what ends up happening is when you have a lot of money, you end up getting a lot of leverage. And so at some point or another, you need to start understanding where does that power of leverage kick in? Meaning, what do you leverage? Do you leverage people? Do you buy resources? What do you do? And so when you understand leverage, you understand that there's two types of leverage. There's leverage of audience, meaning customers, people who follow you for a reason, that they're your friends or anything else.
Yeah.
That's the people leverage. And then there's a resource leverage, things you've built that are tangible that can be used over and over and over and over again. As I've kind of learned that process and as I grew older, I needed to figure out a way that I wanted to make my life count. I had gone through all of these crazy events and things that have happened. I had watched my mom struggle tremendously over and over. I needed to come up with a way a way that I would matter past my death. Call it selfish in a way. I didn't want to be remembered for cars, money, and employing people. I wanted to be remembered and try to come up with a reason why I would be in the memories of people way past my death, and people would still tell my story. This selfish thought originally led me to kind of rethinking about my internal talent, which is something many people never do. They always want the next business idea to make money. They never try to line up the business idea to the reality of what is their talent and what is it that they are very good at compared to other people, that you can invest in creating a vehicle to get that talent to people.
Yeah.
So in other words, a good business is not just making money, is a business that utilizes you as a person and that gives you a competitive edge over competitors because of who you are. And then the business becomes the vehicle to getting that talent onto people, such as a carpenter who's very good at creating wood quality stuff would have a furniture store. The furniture store is the business, right? It is the vehicle to getting his talent, his woodwork.
Yeah.
It is not the other way around where it's like, I wake up, I think there's money in furniture, I'm going to go open a furniture store and sell other people's shit, right? So it's a little bit different. But when I decided to matter, I realized my talent was teaching. And so one of the things I wanted to teach, the first thing I wanted to teach people when I realized this talent was that education isn't bound by the formality of being told to learn. You can learn any day, anywhere, anytime by just paying attention. That was the core of third circle theory, paying attention to what your eyes can teach you. If I could learn all of these things without having access to any of the educational tools most people have access to, then the average human being can too, right? Even if they live in a third world country or somewhere else.
Of course.
So that was the first thing. The second thing was to separate this idea of society and success and society and purpose. Most people correlate success and money to life. They're like, hey, if you make a lot of money, you're going to be very successful. That's wrong. Making money is a very imperative part of success because it is part of the success that society gives you, meaning society measures success in money. Money is a necessity to move through society.
Right. And the more money you get, the more leverage you get.
Yeah, exactly. And the more people believe that money doesn't matter, the more poor they remain, over time, because they keep rejecting it instead of embracing it. The more people reject government, the less they understand it, the more they outcast themselves. So the point of all of these things is to understand them. You can't be afraid of money. You have to learn how to make money, and you have to learn how to leverage money to progress through society. But you also have to separate the idea that money only gives you as a human being the leverage to buy your time to buy your own time and your own freedom. So you can spend your time on anything you want. So the first leverage you buy in life is the leverage of finding your purpose. You make enough money so that you're in a position to be able to focus on your talent and skills, and therefore draw your life forward and allow your purpose to manifest itself through the actions you take that are more purpose focused rather than money focused. So that's what third circle teaches people. Now, third circle theory is about getting more people to be purposeful, even if they don't find their purpose, is to get people to find purpose in anything and everything they do. Radius, on the other hand, which has nothing to do with a circle, stands for reaching across different industries, uncovering solutions. It's an acronym I created to help people understand that in order to find or to optimize yourself, you can't just be like, I want to go in one business, I want to go in another business, I want to go in this business, maybe I'll figure something out in this one. The point is more people are trying to learn business and they're not understanding business. And there's two completely different things. You can learn about how people have been in business, but you can't understand business without understanding the core concepts behind why business takes place and why it succeeds or fails. So in other words, what I try to do with Radius is give people the skeleton approach to, once you have a vision to mind, how can you make sure that vision is not going against the current? You know what I mean? Like, how do you know that that vision can become tangible? How can you take a product? How can you take an idea to a product to a business to a brand to an empire? And while most people think, well, it's just a progressive evolution of more sales and more stuff, it's really not. It's almost like, how do you understand each stage of the game? And how do you understand the core concepts at each stage that you must master in order to progress? No different than the third circle theory, where I progress people through mastery of circumstance, mastery of society, and then mastery of life. In the particular Radius concept, I transition people from understanding the mindset and the tangible skills and qualities they need to have from the stage of an idea that comes in so many of our heads, right? We all have ideas. We all have great things we want to do.
Right.
And then why do some become products? And then what happens at the product stage that allows a product to actually transition to a business? And why does it create enough trust to become a brand? And how does a brand spread across multiple industries, creating empires? And how does that happen with just one person at the head of it? How can one person be so powerful that they can do this? Like, we've seen the Apple model, right? Like, we've seen how Apple has kind of pretty much taken over the world in their own way.
Sure.
We've seen people do this. This is not new. And this book is not just a breakdown of other people's businesses and saying Apple did this, Apple did that. No one gives a shit about Apple. Apple's Apple, right? It's not any of us. But every one of us has the same capacity to understand the one thing that I never agreed with, which is, Steve Jobs always says you can connect the dots backwards, looking back at your life and saying, oh, this all makes sense.
Right.
But what if there was a way to connect them forward? What if there was an actual way to envision where the next dot was and understand step by step the different concepts you must master to reach that dot, right? So you can reverse engineer your life by looking back at it and saying, oh yeah, I see why that happened to me. Maybe those are the acts of faith or the acts of, spiritual enlightenment, whatever you want to call them, that makes you feel good about why you didn't die in that accident that day and so on and so forth.
Sure.
But in business is black and white, right?
Yep.
Business is black and white. Entrepreneurship is gray. So when the gray meets the black and white, how does the gray become real so that the rest of the world can understand that vision? Because the gray area is your vision, right? Like, you have a vision. Nobody cares about your vision. Nobody understands it. They only care when it impacts them, when it touches them, when your product gets in the hands of people. So what ends up happening is when the gray is trying to turn black and white, there's a lot of concepts and there's a lot of opposition in the world that is there to make sure you don't turn the gray into the black and white. So your job is to understand what these are ahead of time and prepare forward, rather than just go through it and say, hey, I just fought my way through 20 years of hell and now I think I'm okay. Instead, it's like, what if you could strategically work your way forward so that sessions don't bother you, so that problems don't arise, so that expected partner issues don't come up? Like, basic things that you would think are so common sense, but they're not, because most people believe that businesses based on industries change. They're like, if you're in the supplement business, it's a different game. If you're in this business, it's a different game. And reality is none of them are. All businesses are the same because all businesses end up doing one thing, reaching people. And without people, there is no business. And so if you're in business, you're in the business of people. You're not in the business of supplements. You're not in the business of airlines. You're in the business of people.
Yeah.
So if you don't understand people, if you don't understand how to evolve an entourage into a customer into an audience, and then the audience into the mass public, then you don't understand how to break through the reach of creating an empire. And at each stage, a product reaches an entourage, but a brand reaches an audience. Get it? Like, so there's different concepts to connect to people so that they understand, because too many people today look at business from this idea of marketing. They're like, oh, I own a supplement company. This is how a supplement company markets itself.
Right.
Which is very wrong. The way people get successful in business is by understanding people and ultimately ending up connecting people to innovations.
But PJ, let me ask you this. But before we dive in, I mean, I hope changemakers, that ones that are watching this, listening to this, that's why you got to follow Secret Entourage. That's why you got to dive in to some of their videos and academies that are set up there, so you can get a little bit of perspective from some of their amazing trainers and people that are on their platform, as well as PJ. Because I think you said so much there, and I love. There's so many different things I wanted to bring up, but let me ask you this from a personal standpoint. You've coached and you've teached so many different entrepreneurs, and you've seen a lot of young entrepreneurs kind of come through. Out of all the different pillars in terms of people, in terms of product, in terms of business, where do you think people are kind of stuck on? What's like the misconception of people in terms of when they are thinking of building a brand, a business? Like, at which stage do you see a lot of people are just super unclear, or they're not finding that success, and because of it doesn't help them building that empire?
Well, it's the same thing I just told you earlier about my own life, right? I said too many people are focused on the future and they're not doing the work in the present, right?
Sure.
So what that means is the same thing. When someone has an idea, they're already thinking about a business. When someone has a product, they're already saying they're a brand and they're going to set up this brand. They're not a brand. It takes a lot of work to be a brand. Sorry if I curse. But what I'm saying is, all I'm saying is that the idea is that if you have an idea, it's only an idea. So work on the idea. If you have a product, work on the product, better the product. You don't be confused about where the empire goes. That stuff's irrelevant.
Right.
What's relevant is to move a product, right? Like, I have so many people that have thousands of shirts. Like, they create a clothing company, which I think is the dumbest thing you can do in 2017. But let's say someone creates a clothing company. And they're like, I have a great clothing company.
Sure.
What they do is they're like, I have these shirts, but I'm a brand. So this is the way I'm thinking about my shirts and how they're going to be everywhere.
Right.
And I'm like, how many shirts have you sold? They're like, 3. I'm like, okay, then why are you worried about where your shirts are going to be sold? Go sell a t-shirt, man. Like, it's black and white, bro. Take that shirt and get 6,000 units in the hands of people. And then worry about the brand element of, how to...
So you're saying people's focus is wrong,
right?
Well,
people focus on the bigger picture instead of where the present work is, which is fine. Like, look, we all have visions. We all know what we want our lives to look like. We all look ahead.
Yep.
The problem is, are we stuck in the future, or are we working to build the future? Those are two completely different things. Because you see, at no point in any of my companies did I know exactly what would happen at any given time to allow us to become big or, very, very good from a monetary standpoint. What I did know was I did know the work we were doing, and I had an idea of the direction I was going, and I was prepared to adapt. You see, I wasn't following a path. I was prepared to adapt as I followed the direction, and those are very, very different things. You can work on something and say, I know exactly what's going to happen. I've seen my shirt in 6,000 places, and that's where I want my t-shirts to be sold. Or you can understand that you'll need some type of distribution, and distribution is an important part of the business, but you don't have a vision of being in 6,000 stores. Instead, you focus on selling enough t-shirts and then allow yourself to adapt as the point of distribution comes forward, because you've sold enough shirts, on how distribution will happen, you know? But if you're so focused on being in 6,000 stores, right?
Yeah.
What happens? You're running around telling every store they need to carry your brand, which to them is a shitty t-shirt nobody cares about. And on your side, you're like, but it's about this, and it's about this culture. And they're like, sold 3 t-shirts. What culture? Like, what are you talking about? What your friends won't adopt your own culture, right? Your own 50 friends on Facebook are not sure. But you need to ask yourself, these are the real questions people misunderstand, right? They're like, my brand is so tight. And I'm like, okay, great. What does it do? They're like, it's a shirt. I'm like, how is that a brand? They're like, it's a shirt. I'm like, what does it stand for? It's the logo on it. Okay, that's not how brands are born. That's not how brands happen. Brands happen through consistency, trust, and process. What does a logo on a t-shirt have to do with consistency, trust, and a process when 3 people in the world have worn it, not 100,000?
Right.
It has no association. So what I'm trying to say is that people are so focused on the bigger idea that they're forgetting that the bigger idea is so much further ahead, and that the work today is what leads them to eventually even having the opportunity to think about the bigger idea. So you got to focus on the work. And I think the biggest struggle people have is when they have a product, they're trying to build a brand, you know, and when they have an idea, they're already focused on how to make money instead of focusing on how to build a product instead. So this systemology of wanting to jump the gun and go forward and forward and forward, instead of actually working in the present and understanding that like a quality product will turn into a business. A business will be recognized as a brand over time. And, you know, you see what I mean? So if you focus, eventually people will adopt the brand. But if you focus on the brand, the business will never conquer.
Do you think people are kind of, it's, you know, we mentioned it a couple of times in this interview. I think you're so right, by the way, because, you know, if people are it's where you focusing on, what you focus on tends to grow, you know, and people, I think, in this social media driven world where everybody's talking about, you know, entrepreneurship, it just seems that way, hustling, and maybe it's just in this department. Do you think that has caused people to kind of look out further and be like, oh my God, I gotta set the goals, I gotta set the vision, and then they kind of start living there, and they don't really do kind of a reality check with themselves and say, hey, this is the stage that I'm in, these are the critical things that I need to push, right, so that I can move myself forward? Because I love the way that you break this down in radius in terms of which stage are you at. You know, it's kind of like a reality check of, and what are the things you need to focus on to grow?
I mean, I'll tell you something funny. I've had maybe so far less than 100 people read Radius early copies, you know, that went out just to get kind of some thought and feedback. Sure. And I think about 8 people now have stopped their business and have quit entrepreneurship as a result, which I love. I think that's fantastic, because the point is not to kill people's dream. The point is to fast forward your growth, right? And sometimes fast forwarding your current growth includes stopping what you're doing because it's complete shit. So if you're doing the wrong thing, then you need to say, okay, like this isn't going to go anywhere. I need to stop and start over, or start something different. And it also encourages people to not immediately jump till you figure it out, you know, but rather take time and systematically think about everything. But one of the things that I think is about social media you brought up, and it's that social media is in its infancy stage, in the sense that us as human beings, as people, are learning how to present ourselves through the lens of these tools, which are photo, video, and
Instagram, YouTube.
Right? Exactly. And we're learning that. There's some of us that are using this as an opportunity for business. There's others that are using it because they have never had an audience before, right? So they never had people paying attention. Before you mail someone a photo of your family, now you can post it and the complete strangers are seeing it, right?
Yeah.
People that have nothing to do with you, that are friends of friends of friends, and you're like, I'll never talk to that guy in my life. But somehow now he's liking the photo of me and my cousin, and you're why? But okay, whatever.
Yeah, I'll take it.
So we're not learning. We're starting to learn how to adopt and adapt to an age where information flows freely both ways and just kind of is there for people to consume as they want. Now, one of the problems with social media is that it's made it very easy to get lost in the idea that it is a race. Because before, you see, the context of what you saw was limited to your street or your city. Like you knew the guy with a Lamborghini in your town, you didn't know the guy with 7 Lamborghinis in California. You know, if you lived in, right? Like you didn't know that. Now you know the top 10 people that own cars across the globe, and suddenly you feel really small because you're like, oh, I have 3 Ferraris. That guy has 100.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's something wrong with me. Like I'm not working hard enough. So there's a good and a bad to that. The good is it opens your eyes to the possibility of the world. You can now see what the world lives like, both good and bad. You have a clear view of what's really happening in the Middle East. You have a clear view of what's really happening, you know, like in third world countries. And you also have a clear view of the possibilities of success because you're giving an inside look into someone's house or family or whatever it is. And you can hear their story and be like, wow, this guy built a $10 billion empire from nothing. That's inspirational. Just like people that may be watching this say, oh my God, like PJ did this. I can do it too.
Yeah.
That's the power of social media. The podcasting industry is no different too. You guys are sharing a message, right?
Yep.
So the problem though becomes is when people start comparing themselves instead of taking in the message. So when you start competing, that's when you lose. Because you see, the context was in the older ages when you competed with people in your city, people around you, people who were in the same environment, in the same circumstance.
Yeah.
Now you're competing with someone that have possibilities that are completely different from yours, that have baselines different from yours, that are in industries different than yours. So you're starting to, the problem is when people start comparing themselves and saying, am I behind because of my age? Am I behind because of, you know, like the fact that this guy is 25 and he's doing this, this other guy is 35 and doing that, and I'm 40 and I'm stuck here. You know, if that was the case, then Jack Ma, the guy that founded Alibaba, should have never started, right? He should have never started, and as a result, he wouldn't be one of the richest people in the world, right? Because he's old, and he could have looked on social media and been like, man, I never did this in my 20s, I'm screwed now, right? And this is something else to talk about in Radius, is people think that their life starts at the 0 line and they're going to go 0 to 100, meaning like their lifeline is 0 to 100.
Like I'm here, I need to get to wherever I want to go, $1 million, whatever, like that.
Yeah, it's point A to point B. And then the other idiots actually think that there is a scribbly line to success. Okay. So they're like, oh, it's about A to C to Z to D, and then I'm back to C, you know, and you've seen that stupid graphic.
Right.
So that's what they think it is then. So there's this misconception. Reality is that the number one thing people forget to look at is that all of us are at a negative 100 situation. Meaning like we're at a position when we're not even at the starting line when we start. We need to build our foundation. We need to have order with our habits. We need to build, you know, better character. All of these things which are abstract, boring, they suck. We're not talking about making money. We're not talking about purpose. We're talking about working on something that can take you years and that's completely inefficient when you look at it from a social media standpoint because it's not sexy, right? It doesn't get you a Ferrari. But reality is it's the only way you'll actually get one. And because we can't talk about it, well, we never get to it. Because, you know, if I tell, so many people come to me and go, hey, I don't have the capital to start a business. Where do you get the capital to start? Or they're like, hey, I'm struggling to make some money so I can have capital for inventory. And you know, I always answer with one word, work, go to work. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, get a job. Like, what's wrong with getting a job? Like, if you need money, go do stuff, right? Like, make money. And they're like, oh, no, I need the capital. Like, I have to have the capital now because I'm going to build the next, you know, big company. And
next big brand, next big empire.
Like, no, you need to get money, right? That's what you said. You need money. That's fine. You identify that. Well, then go get a job. How do you get money? Like, we forget this idea that to get to the starting line sometimes, that in itself is a longer journey than going from the start to finish. But if we prepare that journey well, if we go from negative 100 to 0 really fast and really good in the correct way, then we have a much stronger chance from 0 to 100 to be effective, efficient, and to actually reach the 100 line. Because 99% of people don't reach their dreams, right? They don't reach their goals. They don't reach their aspirations. That's why we have a 1% population that eats the 99% when it comes to wealth, right? Yeah. It's because they're the unicorns. It's not the other way around. That's a unicorn model. So what happens is you have to be able to be prepared to do the work in the negative 100 to 0. Because if you don't, what you're going to reach is what so many young people are doing today. I start a business, a year later I didn't make enough money, I'm starting a different one. I'm starting a different one. I'm starting a different one. And by the time you're 40, you've lost all types of confidence. that you have 2 shits worth of a skill to build a business because you've done it 50 times and you failed. And people are still stuck on this idea that I had to get it right once, but I failed 100 times. I'm like Thomas Edison. No, you ain't Thomas Edison. You're a dude sitting in a fucking apartment trying to figure out how to create a t-shirt company that's going to sell 100 t-shirts. You're not trying to change the world.
Yeah.
And that's the misconception. People are focused on this idea that they matter instead of working on mattering, if that makes sense. So they're so focused on the idea that they matter and that they're so big and powerful at some point in the future, but they're not working on creating businesses and making an impact that matters enough so that they eventually become that person. So it's the same concept. You have to prepare for success, no different than anything else you do. An athlete doesn't compete in the Olympics every single time and then says, my practice run was the Olympics and I fucked up 30 times in a row, and eventually I came in 42 place.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Like, why wouldn't you just practice 10 years before going to the Olympics, right? We don't allow that. We don't allow people to practice or get in the Olympics unless they've proved they have a minimum capacity of being the best, right?
I love that. I mean, talking to you, it's just it's definitely a reality check. I mean, for a lot of the listeners and watchers, I mean, I can. That's a really interesting stat, by the way, that 8 people read the book, and or 8 people out of the 100 that read the book or so have really quit their job, because I think it is a reality check at which stage you're at, right? And you know, what are the actual priorities and how can you move yourself forward at wherever you are on that scale. And maybe you're not even at 0, right? Maybe you're just developing your skills and capabilities, and that's okay. Right, but I love that. That's
100% okay. That's part of life, right? Like if you want to be a basketball player tomorrow morning, you got to go practice. You got to go play, right? You're not going to immediately be in the NBA. You have to play, and eventually maybe you'll get there. But if you're always talking about the NBA instead of being on the court practicing, then what are the odds you're eventually going to get in the NBA? Probably 0. The guys that are getting in the NBA are the guys that live on the court. They're not the guys that are talking about the contracts and what they're going to do with the money when they reach the NBA one day. They're the guys throwing balls in hoops, because that's what a basketball player does. They're accepting that is their purpose. Their purpose, if they want to be in the NBA, is to throw as many balls into a hoop. Correct? That's it.
Yep.
That is the job of a basketball player. I don't give a shit what country you play basketball for. If there's a hoop, you're throwing a ball in.
You get points when you get it in. Yeah.
Exactly. And that you're playing it in Nigeria or that you're playing it on the court, stateside, and you have an audience or not. Your job is to throw a ball in a hoop. So how good are you at throwing a ball in a hoop, rather than how good are you talking about how many balls you're going to throw in hoops? You know what I mean? How many balls have you actually thrown through hoops?
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's the disconnect people have. It's the work and the present.
So PJ, can people get this at powerofradius.com? I know that's kind of like the website for the book. I mean, people want the reality check. People want the perspective. Is that where they go?
I mean, I recommend everybody, especially because Radius comes out next month, go and pick up Third Circle Theory at thirdcirclebook.com or anywhere else you get, a book. It's really that. If by now you don't know where to get a book, you have other issues altogether, right? If you don't know where Amazon, perhaps you shouldn't be in business, right? Yeah. Like if you're that secluded from the world.
There you go. There's people signing off. They're like,
so there's
what am I doing?
Like, I don't know what Amazon is. So that's a problem in itself.
Yeah.
But outside of just learning Third Circle Theory before Radius comes out, if you want Radius, go to powerofradius.com. There's a very cool video I've put together for people explaining kind of that concept. We talked about recycling customers and recycling resources and how to build multiple businesses at once, being just one person. I put that video there to explain kind of the Radius concept. People can sign in and opt in to get notified when the book first comes out.
Yep.
They'll only be notified. Only the list will get the book first before it's released everywhere else. By quite a large margin of time. So if you're interested in the book, definitely opt in. And otherwise, for everybody else that's, that wants to join us, then our movement is at secretentourage.com. And I recommend that after you've read Third Circle Theory, only after, don't skip the pre-work.
Yeah. And
go to secretentourage.com and at least join our network so that you can be around people who believe in the same values and concepts as you do.
Well, PJ, I got one last question for you, and I'll make sure to link everything down below because I think people, are in need of a reality check more often than they think they do. So, PJ, the show itself, it's called the Inner Changemaker, right? So I'm curious, what comes to your mind when you hear somebody is being a change maker?
I think of someone as someone who understands that their talents are valuable to the world. And so you have to first recognize your talents. We talked about this a little bit through the hour, but two, you have to value the fact that your talent can be a change in the world for other people. So as little as somebody may think their talents are, as little as they may think they're just a mechanic, they're just a woodworker, they only write, they're just good at academics, they don't know. Once you identify your talent, understand that the world loves talent. And the impact only comes from your ability to take that talent to people. So don't be afraid of allowing change to occur through your talent first and allowing the world to be impacted by your talent. Eventually, everything big must start small, right? And so sometimes it just comes down to the idea of recognizing the talent before being able to actually go out there and change the world.
PJ, I appreciate your time, brother, and I really appreciate your insights and the reality check. Especially people that are listening and watching, make sure to grab a copy of Third Circle Theory, as well as get notified for Radius when it does come out, powerofradius.com. PJ, I really appreciate the insights, brother, and we can't wait to chat with you.
Thanks for having me on, Jay.
Yeah, thank you so much.